Good morning, everyone. We have quorum, so we'll get going. This is a public meeting to consider the proposed comprehensive official plan and zoning bylaw amendments listed as items 2 through 9 on today's agenda. For the items just mentioned, only those who make oral submissions today or written submissions before the amendments are adopted may appeal the matter to the local planning appeal tribunal. In addition, the applicant may appeal the matter to the local planning appeal tribunal if council does not adopt an amendment within 150 days of receipt of the application for zoning and 210 days for an official plan amendment. And as you likely know, there's a comment sheet at the door, either for written comments or to register to speak. And just a notice to committee members that if you have any motions on any of the amendments listed today, please send a copy to us ahead of the public delegation so the committee members and staff have an opportunity to review, and certainly the delegations as well, and the applicant. Clarify your motion during the discussion of the matter. Thank you. So, as is tradition, this being the final meeting of this term, I talk a little bit about what we have accomplished. So we've reached the end of this term of council and our final planning committee meeting, and I'm left wondering where the 4 years have gone. With this committee, we meet so often, it just helps pass the time, I think. The time has certainly flown by, mostly because we've been so busy. There's no denying that the Planning Committee is the most active of all City Council's standing committees, and we've certainly had no shortage of interesting discussion. It has been our responsibility to weigh in on literally hundreds of items, hundreds of files in this term. And if I can take a few moments, I'd like to toot the horn of everyone that's been involved in that process. Between the staff of Planning Services, Infrastructure Services, Heritage Planning, and Economic Development, this committee has considered 762 committee reports over the last 4 years. That's an average of nearly 200 reports per year, each one backed up by the advice, analysis, and recommendations of city staff. As councillors, we would be unable to do this job without your advice, and I want you to know how much we all appreciate your hard work. I didn't add illegal. I should say legal as well, Mr. Mark. As councillors, we would be unable to do this job, but not only do you produce the insightful reports put before us, but you are here at every meeting to clarify and answer tough questions. It might not always be easy, but for the members of this committee, it's always valuable. So thank you. Of course, given how jam-packed planning committee agendas tend to be, these reports do stack up. It's a lot of reading, and it's not always easily digestible material either. The issues we tackle together are often complex and sometimes divisive. For that reason, I also wanted to say how thankful I am as chair of this committee that I have been able to work with such a dedicated and principled team of fellow councillors. You've been asked to take in a ton of information, and you have remained utterly engaged on every single file that has come before us. Files that might be politically unpopular or that impact a particular community, like the days of discussion we had around the location of a new Salvation Army facility. Files that capture the interests of everyone, even those beyond our municipal boundaries, like the design of the proposed addition to the beloved Chateau Laurier. Files that promise to reinvigorate and re-energize entire communities, like the neighborhood revitalization strategies we adopted for Hetherington and Vanier South Overbrook as part of the Building Better Revitalized Neighborhoods. Files where we are challenged to grapple with conflicting advice, as is the case of the Ugandan High Commission, where we needed to weigh the staff recommendation against guidance from the Built Heritage Subcommittee. Files that result in changes to broader city policies and impact future development, like changes to zoning for R4 and multi-unit residences, or regulations about where coach houses can be built. All of these things we have dealt with in the past 4 years. And that's in addition to a whole host of applications for site-specific zoning and official plan amendments for new residential developments, infill projects, suburban subdivisions, high-rise condo towers, and everything in between. So thank you for taking the time to absorb the information put before us and for engaging in meaningful and valuable discussion on all these files and more. The result has been sound planning decisions, even if those decisions are not always popular. I would like to thank the residents, dedicated community association members, and development professionals who have come out to our meetings. Thank you for your interest in the discussion and for your patience. I know that you sometimes have to wait hours for the chance to have your say on a particular proposal or to see the outcome. It's important for our transparency as a government that the public follow and be engaged on planning matters. Finally, I will thank the journalists who come to these meetings. You follow our committee with great interest and report our discussions fairly, informing those residents who can't be here about what's going on in our city. So thank you for that. The next time this committee meets, it could look very different, but I have no doubt it will continue to be busy. A new development charges bylaw is due in 2019. Very, very important, and one that Councillor Blais and I have talked about so very many times. A new stage 2 of LRT will get underway, which will bring its own land use implications as well as additional transit-oriented development projects to consider. The massive development at LeBreton Flats will certainly occupy a lot of time, and the development of the new official plan will get underway next year with a 4-year process that ultimately will be considered by this committee. Those are just a few of the things that planning staff are likely to present on their annual work plan in January. The committee will no doubt have plenty to occupy it in the new term of council. That first meeting of planning committee is when is it? January? We don't know. Later on in January. I'm thinking the 22nd. Okay, just because I was looking at my calendar today and I noticed there wasn't anything in it, and I thought, oh, well, that's probably planning committee. But for now, I just want to take a quick look back at how much we've achieved together and to say thank you for the past 4 years. So thank you, everyone. Any declarations of interest? None? Confirmation of minutes from our meeting on October 9th. Boy, that seems like a long time ago. Okay. Communications as listed, 75 Woodruff Avenue. Yeah. Received? I'm going to change pages here. The designation of Cobble Cottage, 420 Kenwood Avenue under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act. We have no speakers on that. Does anyone have any questions? Is it carried? Sure. Thank you. Canada Avenue Secondary Plan Amendment and Environmental Assessment. I see that Councillor Wilkinson's not here yet, and Councillor Hubley isn't either, so the traffic coming in from Canada and Barhaven must be rotten. But we are going to have a presentation on that one, so we'll be holding that item. Item 3 is the zoning bylaw amendment for 4025 Strandherd Drive. That's the Harmony, continuation of Harmony, and Sue Murphy is here. Hi, Sue. Do you need to speak if we're prepared to carry it? No, not. Thank you. Anybody have any questions on this? Is it carried? Thank you. Zoning bylaw amendment, part of 3025 Albion Road North. We're holding that because we have speakers. Number 5 is the zoning bylaw amendment for 1000 Thomas Spratt Place. We do have a speaker, Pastor Mark Alley Morissette. Yes, I'm here. Okay, and you want to speak, sir? Well, not necessarily, ma'am. Okay, so hang on a minute. I also have Nancy Malash here. Nancy, do you need to speak if we're prepared to carry it? I'm here to support it, yeah. So, sir, if no one has any questions? Okay, we don't have any questions. Okay, all right. So you don't need to speak if we're prepared to carry it? Yes, if you are. Okay, thank you. So is this item carried? Carried. There you go, sir. We'll be off to council next. Thank you. Part of 300 Goulburn Forest Road zoning bylaw amendment. No speakers. Marcel Deneme. Marcel, do you need to speak if we're prepared to? No? So is this item carried? Okay. Zoning bylaw amendment for 415 Huntsville Drive. Taylor Marquis, or Marcus, is it, how do you say it? Marquis. I was right there. With Regional Group. Does anyone have any questions on Huntsville Drive? No? So are you, no need to speak? Okay, thank you very much. Is it carried? Thank you. Number 8 is 339 Cumberland Street. We have a technical amendment. We have one speaker if needed. Chris Jalkowski.
I'm here. I don't need to speak. Not required.
Thank you very much, sir. So I'll have Councillor Kadri move the technical amendment, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and I'll just read the therefore be it resolved that the staff report ACS 2018 PIEPS 0107 be revised as follows. A, revised document 3, part 2 of report ACS 2018 PS 0107 by replacing the words amend exception 1967 to section 239 with add a new exception to section 239. And be it further resolved that pursuant to Planning Act's subsection 3417, no further notice be given.
Thank you. So on the amendment, is it carried? And on the item as amended, carried?
Carried.
Thank you. Number 9 is the zoning bylaw amendment for 352, is it Crete Place? Crete or Cret? In Rita Vanier. We have Liz Lightfoot and Janice Messam. And we have Jesse Smith. And it says here that you wish to speak only if there's opposition. Okay, so does anyone have any opposition to this item? This is wonderful news, really. No? So there you go. So on the item, is it carried? Thank you very much. And then we have information previously distributed, the cash in lieu of parkland report. Okay, received? Thank you. So I think what we're going to do, this is, so the first item that's held is the Canada North item, and I'd like somebody to contact Councillor Wilkinson's office to make sure she is intending to come, but I'm sure. Was the traffic really bad, Alan? Over 2 hours. That's what I said when the both of you weren't there, so I'm pretty sure that that's what it is, but let's confirm that. But I don't have any speakers on that item, but we are having a presentation. Oh, I do have a speaker. Anyways, we're going to hold off. I'm going to go to the other held item, which is item number 4. And are any of the people in attendance here to support Église de Dieu d'Expression Française d'Ottawa? And it's been passed. Okay? Thank you. Okay. So item number 4 is zoning bylaw amendment, part of 3025 Albion Road North. And our first speaker is Mohammed Joma. Mohammed, are you here? Wait.
Close to the mic.
Could pull the mic closer to you. Thank you for coming. You have, and for everybody in the audience, you have 5 minutes, sir.
Yeah, I won't be too long. I'm here just in support of the project. I live in the Riding. I know some questions or opposition against the project, the amendment, because of the existing traffic. What I believe when we move over and Hydro Ottawa with their easy 300 to 400 employees will be out and their larger trucks, that will really ease the traffic, especially it won't be on the traffic time. I'm here just because I live in the Ryden and just 2 blocks away from the project. I'm in support, and that's what I can say.
That's great. Well, thank you very much for coming out. Anyone have any questions? No, thank you, sir. The next speaker is Carol Schwartz. Carol is, we do have a submission from her, and she's with the Ridgemont Community Association. Carol, are you here?
She's not here. She had a family situation.
Okay. Everett Etier. Is Everett here? Come forward, Everett. You have 5 minutes, sir.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm also with the Ridgemont Community Association, however, not a member of the executive.
Okay.
As our friend just previously stated, there are objections from within the Ridgemont community, primarily with respect to traffic. Perhaps I'll restart and say that the community's objections are just that, on the traffic. Nobody objects to the spirit and the goal of what is being attempted here in terms of this project. In fact, I would say these projects are extremely important to the overall health of a well-functioning city and community. And we're strongly supportive of that. The problem with this is that we do feel that as a city, and I'm speaking inclusively, all of us, we need to do a better job at planning locations for these types of facilities. We've heard of the challenges that this group has gone through over the years trying to secure a location on which to build. And what we find is that the location that they've been able to get, because large developers don't want it, is not ideal to this type of location, and it goes down to site use. We've been told on several occasions that traffic is to be dealt with at site planning. I think the issues here are more fundamental than that and go to its actual use, and therefore are call into question the rezoning. My friend just spoke, mentioned that with the exit of Hydro, Ottawa Hydro, that traffic will drop. I have a copy of Table 14 from the applicant's own traffic report that clearly indicates that's not the case. Traffic will actually increase markedly, and at hours that are, we don't typically have traffic right now. Midday, evenings, weekends, very significant traffic increases, and this is over and above an existing problem that we've been trying to address for years. A recent report was submitted, I don't have a copy here, that the cut-through traffic through our small little Ridgemont community has increased from 1,300 vehicles a day to 2,000. This additional traffic will be over and above that. We have 2 small schools in the area. Our Kitchener and Albion are the only two ways to access this site. It's on a dead-end street. So this increase in traffic is going to be very limited in terms of their options of how to access that center. So with that, we very much want to be good neighbors. We very much want to be able to work with this community. But in order for that to happen, our concerns, primarily from a safety perspective, but also as a traffic volume perspective, need to be addressed. We are hesitant to believe that it will be effectively addressed through site planning. As such, and pardon me, Madam Chairman, I'm not sure of the protocols here and whatnot, but I would like to formally request that an amendment to the proposal be proposed to include a holding provision on the basis that traffic issues would be dealt with as a part of and mandatory to this project, as opposed to something that we attempt to mitigate later on and may not be able to. So with that, and I apologize, I did have additional notes, but I've noted the efficiency with which you're running this meeting and the number of items that you have on the table. So I'm abbreviating my message here. But with that, I don't know if there would be any questions, or if I...
That's my job to
okay.
ask. But you have to finish. You have 4 seconds left.
I'm good then.
Okay. So I think it's your first time coming here.
It is.
Right. And I think you did really well. Yeah, the holding symbol would come from this side of the table and that sort of thing. But we have somebody here to speak to transportation, and I'm going to ask you to do that, the impact, some of the suggestions that were made or comments that were made as to the validity of the report or the increase that you anticipate being significant, not significant. So if you could just make... Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Etier? Okay, so just stay there for a minute, sir.
Certainly.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. The reference to Table 14 identifies all the various activities that will be happening. It doesn't isolate each one that could be happening during the AM and PM. What I mean to say is there's going to be a lot more traffic off-peak on a Saturday when the road traffic is at its minimum, so it would not affect the overall traffic.
You're talking about the net effect.
That's correct. Well, I was going to continue on with that. The net difference that was being referred to, the weekdays AM, it's roughly 140 vehicles per hour existing, and the proposed is 150 vehicles per hour. That's rather 10 vehicles per hour difference. And in the PM, it's roughly 130 vehicles per hour for both existing and proposed. I'd further like to mention that the site traffic is higher on a Saturday, road traffic is higher on weekdays, and the various usage short duration trips impact the off-peak period.
Okay, thank you. I can tell you that I know that I spoke with Councillor Deans yesterday, and I spoke with Councillor Brockington, and the issue of some kind of traffic mitigation is going to be discussed at site plan, and I know that Councillor Deans intends to hold a meeting. This is in her ward. And that will be a topic that both of them have discussed, and I know that Councillor Brockington is going to ask for a direction to include it. I don't believe that anyone's going to put a holding symbol on this. I don't think it'd be appropriate in my mind because it is a site plan issue. It is a site plan issue. You can ask a question, sure. Does anyone have any questions, though, for Mr. Etier? No. Thank you, sir, for coming to listen to more and see what Councillor Brockington has to say. Go ahead.
I think it's appropriate at this time just to add a little context about traffic numbers. At the public meeting that I hosted 2 weeks ago, the traffic consultant for the proponent left the impression with many at the meeting that there would be a net decrease in traffic, and that's not the case. Her own numbers in Table 14 that our speaker just referenced indicate a net increase. And there are times of the day where the net increase will be significant compared to now. And so proponents for quite a while have said that this will actually be a net decrease with all the hydro vehicles no longer coming to and from their head office, but the actual reality is there will be a net increase, and I know that Wally and I have spoke on this matter as well. So I have a number of other points to make, but we'll hear from our delegations first, and then we'll get into those questions. Thank you.
Okay, all right. Norm Payne, who is the president of Ridgemont Community Association. Norm? Oh. I see that you asked to be last, and I just see now that someone else has signed up to speak. But go ahead, sir, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you,
In Arabic, Allaham wa salaham. The proposed community center will be a welcome addition to the community. However, cut-through traffic and safety concerns from cut-through traffic is an ongoing problem, but an easily resolvable one. Our neighborhood experiences ever-increasing cut-through traffic, just recently up from over 1,300 to over 2,000 cars a day. It should be pointed out that one of the planners did not accurately indicate traffic volumes. I say to our future neighbors, your community center would be successful beyond your expectations, bringing even more traffic probably. Or you may find that expenses are higher than projected, and the banquet hall, the warehouse, and the clinic, which you have planned, would have to be pressed into service to increase revenues, bringing perhaps an unanticipated increase in cut-through traffic. Cut-through traffic makes all of us suffer frequently. Many suffer intensively, and some almost beyond the point of concern, or rather comfort and safety. One resident even had 2 cars in a short space of time go through the front of their home. The police cannot simply enforce restrictions. City councilors met here on the 20th of November 2017 with the Finance and Audit Police Board Committee to hammer home to the Ottawa Police that residents want to see more traffic enforcement by city officers. And this is from the Ottawa Citizen. While the chief said that he hears complaints from both city politicians and their presidents, he said there will be no additional money earmarked for traffic enforcement. Councillor Keith Egley said residents continue to ask him where the police are and where the enforcement is, because they just don't see it, and neither do we. Egley pressed, asking how many of the 50 new officers hired in the last 2 years and the 25 to be hired next year will be specifically assigned to traffic. The chief said the answer is none. Councillor Riley Brockington asked, when traffic is a significant issue to residents, police have not addressed their concerns. The police chief said the force is busy balancing traffic enforcement with competing challenges in the city, such as disorder issues, a growing opioid crisis, and dealing with illegal cannabis shops. Councillor Rowley Brockington said traffic continues to be the #1 priority for residents because that's what they live and breathe every day. The police chief said, I hear you. This underscores the reason why we would link the rezoning directly to preventing cut-through traffic. We have worked in the past cooperatively with the Shoppers Drug Mart, Home Depot, Canada Post, 2 schools, the Salvation Army, and many others, always with clearly agreed to written guarantees enforceable by the city. Our neighbors are promising to be stellar neighbors. You can easily demonstrate that, I say to you now, by meeting us halfway. Your commitment to our future neighbors, I say to you, to agree to the rezoning to guarantee of preventing cut-through traffic would solve the problem right here and now. You might ask why we seek such firm assurances. To that we say we have learned much from people who have made us promises and given us assurances that they would be ideal neighbors, only to be exactly the opposite, either knowingly or unknowingly. If recent applications, rezoning applications like Glaber Park, 26 Aylmer Avenue, and many others all went off the rails, it is because their community associations took initial assurances at face value. but also could or did not foresee all the possible exploitation of zoning applications to prevent the irreversible problems they are now permanently saddled with. If for any reason the community center backs out of its plan, as they have already from the original one, and someone else takes over that site, they will have no reason to feel obliged to honor any promises the previous owners may have made. One thing the Ridgemont Community Association has learned the hard way is to always expect the unexpected and to be prepared for the accidental, the unforeseen, and the unpredictable. If this application is to be fair to both sides, we are asking, and I use the term loosely here, that some link be made with the rezoning application and or some kind of a holding provision should be added. Thank you very kindly, all.
Thank you very much. Anyone have any questions? Oh, yes, sorry, Steve. Councillor Blais?
Thank you very much for your presentation. I just, on my screen, I just pulled up an overhead, Google map of the area.
Yes.
What is your main concern on the cut-through traffic? Where do you think the vehicles are coming from to get to the location?
Well, the answer to that is multifaceted. For one thing, we have several no right turn and no left turn signs on Bank Street between Home Depot and Walkley. These no turn restrictions are flagrantly disregarded. Councillor Rowley Brockington had the brilliant idea to install a permanent red light when you couldn't turn, and not after a while, right away, people started going through the red light, because these are people who are doing this every day. They know the lay of the land, they know there's no traffic coming. So to answer your question, the traffic's coming from all directions, and with the community center coming in here, the people that are coming here will come from everywhere too. And they use our streets as shortcuts to get to Albion, to get to Walkley, to get to Solano and points beyond. Does that answer your question, please?
Not really.
Could you rephrase? Tell me, perhaps maybe I misunderstood it.
No, I think you understood. I'm looking at it and I'm thinking to myself, if I was a driver and I wanted to get to this building, I would turn down a street that is called Kitchener.
Right.
And then I would turn left up onto Albion. But you're saying that people are turning on to all the other streets that intersect with
right.
So Vancouver and Fox Bar and Notting Hill, etc.
Not necessarily every one of them every time, but all of them at some time.
Sure. So that's, in fairness, that's a much harder problem to solve, because how would you propose solving that without cutting your neighborhood off from accessing bank?
Well, we've had a plan for cutting, preventing cut-through traffic. Perhaps this might be too long a presentation for you. I'd be quite willing to come back. But as you know, Bank Street is being developed or redeveloped right from downtown to the Home Depot. And our section between Walkley and Home Depot comes up in the next 5 years. And we intend to bring these two together in such a way that we can prevent cut-through traffic for the neighborhood.
Sure. I appreciate that, and a reconstruction opportunity is a great thing to try to coordinate with. Because my point is, what do you build that can distinguish the fact that someone turning left or right from a bank into the neighborhood lives in the neighborhood versus cutting through? Do you know what I mean?
If I'm understanding your question correctly, you're asking me how can we prevent cut-through traffic coming into the neighborhood?
Yeah.
Right. Who are the people who are cutting through the neighborhood is perhaps the question you want to ask. The people who are cutting through the neighborhood aren't people, by and large, the 1,300 to 2,000 cars who live in the neighborhood. They're coming from Ottawa South, and they need to get to...
Sir, I appreciate that. I understand the genesis of the problem. And I'm happy to work with whomever to help try to fix it, but until you identify the mechanism by which it would happen, right? So a speed bump doesn't distinguish... No,
a speed bump never will, yeah.
Right?
Yes, good
What physical measure do you think would work?
Selective access to streets. For example, if you go on Florence, in the Byward Market area, there are a lot of streets that are two-way, but you actually can't get in from one side and you can't turn left onto the other side. So ideally what I would suggest is that, for example, at the corner of Vancouver and Bank, that there be a median right there that prevents people.
That's perfect. I understand exactly what you're getting at.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mark, do we have the ability to obligate the applicant to do off-site works, you know, half a kilometer away?
Madam Chair, when it comes to site plan approval, I appreciate that, but that's where the applicant could be conditioned to do works. There is very limited ability to require an applicant to do off-site works.
Might I add a comment to that?
No, thank you.
Okay.
I have some other people that are asking questions, but I'm on the board of Hydro Ottawa, and I've been on the board for many years. It never crossed my mind ever to do what you're saying. I always go on Walkley, and I always turn on Albion. When I leave, I'm on Albion, I go to Walkley. There's 2 sets of lights. It's the easy way to go. It gets me directly to a major arterial. So I think that where Councillor Blair was interested in what he was trying to say is how can you identify the traffic that you see within your neighborhood as being people that live there or people that are actually cutting through, and what would the reason be for that? Councillor Rockington and Councillor Deans have questions, I think.
Just again, a little context. The turning restrictions off Bank are in the morning, so people from the south who don't live in the Ridgemont community are again forced to take the arterial roads, Bank to Walkley. That's the way that's being promoted. In the afternoon, what we're having on Kitchener is residents from outside the community, whether they're coming from Hetherington or East Walkley, are coming down Albion to Kitchener to beat all the traffic lights on Walkley and Bank. It's just quicker and easier for non-local residents to take Kitchener, and they come to that light right where the LCBO distribution center is, and that's always been a left-hand restriction in the afternoon, 3:30 to 5:30. So what Mr. Payne referenced is because no one was respecting that, last summer, working with staff, I made that a red light for 2 hours straight. The light never turns green for 2 hours. There's nothing new added because it's always been a left-hand restriction. So having a permanent red light adds nothing new to the situation. But that was, again, to force people from stopping, make the illegal turn. So yes, I just wanted to provide a little context to that. So Mr. Payne, just again for people, how long have you been on the Community Association?
30 years.
And you've seen cut-through traffic in your community as a major concern for many years?
Yes, I can identify them by car.
And you'll know, working with me in this particular term of council on Kitchener, we've had painted messaging.
Yes.
We've done yellow flex sticks.
Yes.
We've done speed display boards.
Yes.
And we've done the permanent red light at
yes.
Bank. Some have been more effective than others. This doesn't reduce volume. These are really geared towards reducing speed, because speed is also an issue. And again, I just want to make sure you're aware, and I want you to acknowledge from my colleagues that in addition to coming to your meetings and coming next week, I've been working with traffic services staff and transportation staff of the city, and there are a number of options that are being considered and will continue to work with you. But I want to make sure that people are aware that we have tried some lesser invasive traffic calming initiatives in the past with little success, and now we're looking at some bigger initiatives. And I'll get into that more after the speakers.
James?
Thank you, and thank you for your presentation. And I think all of us around the table are very sensitive to communities and the frustration they have with cut-through traffic and the impacts on local communities. Having said that, though, in listening to you, what I'm detecting is that the frustration is currently existing. And my concern as the member of council for the Ali Bayat Center, where they're hoping to locate, is to the extent that new proposed use contributes to traffic issues, then I believe it is appropriate to address them at site plan. And I have spoken to Councillor Barkington about it. We both work collaboratively to make sure that happens. But I don't want to leave you with the impression that we're going to fix all the traffic issues currently existing or the cut-through that's coming through Hetherington or anywhere else on the Ali Bayat Center. We can't ask them to address all of those issues, and I just want to make sure that you acknowledge that.
I couldn't agree with you more, but just like renovating an old house, you know, the elbow is connected to the shoulder, is connected to here and there, so everything comes all together. What I've learned over 30 years, and our former president, who isn't here anymore, taught me is always expect the unexpected. Whatever someone tells us, you'll get 50 cars an hour, whatever it is, it's always 3 times the amount. And if you look, you know, in Ottawa and anywhere in the world for that matter, whatever the projections are, they're woefully low. So we have to prepare for that. And keep in mind, this Bank Street development is for the next 50 years. So I'm not pinning all the responsibility on the community center. I'm asking, you know, here's a good opportunity to address this problem, but also keep in mind the community center has the potential for bringing in large numbers of people. Like I mentioned, they may find the need to increase their revenues and have the banquet hall running like Sala San Marco every night, which will bring, as you know, on Preston, there's cars parked all over. If you look at the Robbie's restaurant, which was turned into a religious place, you go there on Friday, there's cars parked all over the place and frequently accidents and so on. So what we're saying is not just pulling things out of a hat, it's from very hard observation. And I think someone asked me if I knew the cars, how do you know the cars are coming in the neighborhood? Every morning I work outside in my yard for about 45 minutes and I see all the cars. I go around and I know whose car belongs in which yard, and I know which ones are cutting through. I'm not saying I'm right 100% of the time, but perhaps maybe 80 to 90. You know, you're like rabbits in a neighborhood. You get to know the lay of the land and who's coming and going and so on. Thank you.
Okay. But as long as we agree that, you know, to the extent the center increases the traffic, we'll address that. But the member council needs to work with the community association, which I know he has been doing on addressing the broader. And I guess the other thing I would say that you need to think about is that Hydro Ottawa building is a significant size building.
Right.
It's to be sold to someone.
Right.
And you might want to think about the other uses that could be in there and their impact, because my sense is that this will smooth out the traffic to different times of day, which will probably make it better.
Yeah, very good point. And to that I would say we're trying to work with Councillor Rowley Brockington with that Bank Street development to prevent in advance this problem that you're predicting perhaps might arise.
Okay, well, thank you very much. And I just remind everybody this is a zoning bylaw amendment we're dealing with. It's not Transportation Committee, and the site plan is yet to come. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Now, Kamal, are you here? Come on forward, please. We have 5 minutes.
Okay. Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Okay. I'm here representing the Ahl Bayt Community Center. We do have an existing property on 200 Baribu in Vanier. We have been residing at that property for very well over 15 years probably. Most of our community resides in Ottawa South. We purchased a property, address is 3095 Albion Road, which is about maybe 100 to 200 feet probably away from the existing hydro building. And we own that property, and just to note on that property, we already have a permit and we've already started doing the infrastructure to put 3 office buildings which can house up to 120 offices. In response to our new neighbors there, the concerns of the traffic, we do share the same issue with them as far as the traffic going through the area, but this issue has been existing a problem for them for the longest time. It has nothing to do with our presence at a community center or bringing a community center. As a matter of fact, it's not much of a community center. It's a full-time school that houses about 170 students at the present time. And we don't anticipate to see any significant increase in numbers of students of that. One note that I would like to make here today, and I don't know where they come up with some of the numbers, but in fact, in reality, if you look at the existing building for Arba Hydro, they do have a little over 400 employees plus the visitors on a daily basis that go through the area. And plus the 170 to 180 trucks that they go through those streets on a daily basis, 24 hours, 7 days a week. Our school presently right now has 17 full-time employees. The worst case scenario will have no more than 25 if we were to increase our presence there. So this is 25 employees on a daily basis, plus an average 40 to 50 vehicles drop off and pick up every day. So 60 to 70 to 80 cars, definitely this is a lot less than 400 employees going through that area on a daily basis, plus the 170 trucks for Arba Hydro. We do, just like I said, we do share the same concern, but we have worked with Councillor Brockington and Councillor Dean for quite some time, and I do understand their concern, and they did bring up this issue, and they have a serious concern. But I think the issue here is the driver compliance in that area. It's not the traffic. The fact that Councillor Brockington took some measures in that area by changing the light in the afternoon and forbidding people from turning left from Kitchener to Bank Street. It did actually work, and we did notice, because I live around that area as well, and I do drive around there a lot, and I could see what's happening. But we will not be the issue. As a matter of fact, we will be decreasing significantly the traffic going through that area. I did bring that up in the public meeting a couple of weeks ago when we talked about it, because a lot of our people who are coming to school on a daily basis, they live around the Hunter Club South and Conroy area there. So they will be using Conroy, Walkley, which will be a much more useful than them going through those small side streets and turning right. If they're heading north on Bank Street, they cannot turn right in the morning regardless, because those things, Vancouver and Kitchener and some other streets, that's 7:30 till 9:30, I think they can't turn right on those streets anyway, regardless of that. So the issues that I'd like to bring in, and we know for sure, we will work with the city, we will work with Councillor Brockington and Diane and the planning committee to address any measures that will basically assure the safety of the neighborhood and our kids and our community for sure. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for coming out, sir. Anyone have any questions? Is it about the zoning? Yep, go ahead. Sure. No, comment or question? Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for your presentation, sir. Just to clarify again, because you were saying that there will be less traffic, your own traffic expert that your team has hired in her own presentation on table 14 clearly indicates that this will have a net increase. So even though we all agree that those hydro vehicles and employees will no longer be in the community, that's true. When you add your school, community center, mosque, there's a net increase. So I just want committee members to know that that is a fact, and that has been proven by their folks. But what I want you to confirm today, and my question is, because we've talked about this before, and I think there needs to be reassurances, is that you and your center will not oppose traffic calming initiatives within the community. You understand and have accepted that you will promote to your parishioners, to members, that you will take Bank to Walkley to come down Albion. Is that correct?
Definitely. We did talk about it before, and we are in total agreement with you on that issue there. Whatever works for the area to make sure that the traffic is compliance, we will go with those measures. We'll have no issue with that for sure.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay. Thank you very much, sir.
That's it.
Thanks for coming out.
Thank you again.
Okay. So we have Jennifer Luan and Teresa Gilchrist. Do you want to speak?
Thank you. My apologies, I was late because of the weather, but I do just want to clarify because there's a lot of things being said, and I think it's gotten confused a bit. But in terms of what the study actually does say about traffic in Kitchener in particular, so we know based on account information and analysis that we've done that the existing two-way traffic on Kitchener during the midday and during the weekday PM peaks. And those two peaks were selected as the worst case because of the different combination of uses. The mosque will have midday prayer times, which are highest attendance on Friday midday. So we looked at that as the worst case, as well as the PM rush hour, because there's a school component, there's a variety of uses. Community center, exercise facility.
Madam Chair, can I just interrupt for a second? Are you giving a subset of your data? You talked about Kitchener, but can you talk about the multi-use center? Because traffic goes in multiple directions. What is that center going to draw?
Absolutely. So we've talked a lot about...
And then what would the presumption be, I think is where you're going. Obviously, not all that traffic is going to turn left onto Kitchener.
No.
I mean... Sure, but I don't want to get sidetracked and have a presumption that everybody attending for any purpose, the current Hydro Ottawa is going to head up Kitchener. I never, as I said, as a person who's been there a lot, I have never even considered that once. So
my only point is that we just focused on Kitchener. That is a subset of all the data. Let's understand what the new center is going to draw, and then we can talk about its impacts on particular streets.
Absolutely.
Or maybe we can just talk about the traffic, because this is not committee, it is the planning committee. Thank you.
Okay, I'll try to do that briefly. So the various uses that are proposed include a school, a rec center, religious education on Thursday evenings, a girls' youth group on Friday, exercise facility, prayer times, and then there is a residual space, and I'm not sure if it was likely already outlined, but there is a warehouse and office component that will be leased out. Because the mosque doesn't require all that space in that big building. So we identified what is likely to be for each of those things, and we, through that, narrowed down what are our critical time periods when we overlay that on top of the road traffic. And then in terms of how it was assigned to the road network, we assigned 40% up Albion to Walkley and split it equally at Walkley, so 20% west, 20% east on Walkley. And then we also have another, the balance, assigned to Bank. And we acknowledge those turn restrictions at Kitchener. So during the midday, those turn restrictions don't apply. So it is full movement at Kitchener at Bank. In the PM, there is the restriction on the westbound left, getting out of Kitchener to go south on Bank. We reroute that traffic and assume that people will obey, and we can't recommend anything about enforcement when they don't, but we assign them to Albion in terms of the capacity of the roads. We put them to Albion and up to Walkley and then down. So that's how it's been allocated to the different streets. And I know that Kitchener is sensitive, and it is a collector road, and the traffic guidelines do have thresholds to identify when these larger area management, like the whole neighborhood, should be considered as a whole in terms of traffic. And the threshold for that kind of is when you see two-way volumes on a collector that exceed 300. So when we do take that component of this site traffic that is assigned to Kitchener and we layer that on top of the existing, during those critical peaks, the existing two-way is around 150, 160 vehicles an hour, so, quite a bit less than 300. And then when we add on the site traffic, during that midday when it's highest, it's in the order of 85 additional vehicles per hour. In the PM, it's less, it's about 40. And so the total projected is still in the order of 230 in that midday and 200 in the PM. So at worst, we are still sitting around 70 or 80% of that threshold for when an area management study is required. So I just wanted to make that point. And also in terms of, well, what does 85 additional vehicles during the midday feel like? It works out to about an additional vehicle every minute and a half, additional vehicle every 5 seconds. And in the PM, it's an additional vehicle every minute and a half.
Are you finished? Okay. Thanks very much. Anyone else? Thank you. Thanks for coming out. Okay, does anyone have a wrap-up? Councillor Deans?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Well, the proposed Ali Bayat Centre at 3022 Albion Road is north, is in my ward, but it is on the boundary, so it's in close proximity to Councillor Brackington's ward, and certainly the potential adverse impacts of traffic would be felt more in Councillor Brackington's ward, so we certainly understand why there's concern from that community. Having said that, just to follow up on what Kamal Foss said about their process, it was back in 2016 that the Ali Bayat Centre purchased the property at 3095 Albion Road. Did that because many of the people that attend their mosque live in my ward or in the south end of the city and currently in Vanier, so they wanted to get in closer proximity, not have everyone driving on our roads so much, so to find an appropriate location in that neighborhood was very important to them. So they purchased a property at 3095. It's just close to the rail line that you can see is sort of at the very end, and for their uses, the city was very concerned in working with them that the site was too small for what they wanted to do, and they had some concerns about the proximity to the railway marshalling yard that is there. So working with the center, they found the Hydro Ottawa building, and I have to say, from my perspective, this is a really great use for that site. Hydro Ottawa is relocating to Hunt Club Road, and they're vacating that site. I don't think it's that easy a building appropriate use for, but for me, this would be the 5th mosque that establishes in my ward, and the biggest challenge, and other people who have mosques in their ward will know this, the biggest challenge is the parking issues associated with the mosque. And the brilliance of this site is that it has a lot of space, and so parking should not be an issue on this site. And it's the biggest challenge I have with all the other mosques, how we accommodate their time of worship. Their peak time of worship is Friday noon, which is a day of commerce, so anytime you establish it in an area where there's commerce happening, there's conflicts that tend to arise. And in this area, because they can accommodate the parking on the site, to me it just seems like a good use. It's in the neighborhood that they want to establish in. It's a building that is going to be vacant. And as I said to the resident earlier, think about the other uses that could have gone into that building and the impact on traffic. And to me, a school and a community center, place of worship, is a good use for the community. It's in a transitional area between more industrial uses and residential uses. So for me, I think, I think a lot about where mosques can go in my ward, because it seems like it's a growth area in the city, but there's not a lot of places that don't come with conflicts with communities, especially on parking. And this the ones I think is actually about the best I can think of as a location for a mosque to establish in my ward. So I just wanted to say the issues the community are raising are site plan issues. And to the extent that the mosque is contributing to the traffic issues, then we will commit to addressing those at site plan. But from a zoning perspective, it's brilliant. I think it's a great location. I've worked closely with the Ali Bayat Centre for the last couple of years. I look forward to welcoming them into my ward, and I know that they will find a home there for many years.
Thank you, Councillor Deans. Councillor Brockington.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and Councillor Deans has done well to summarize, I guess, the last 2.5 years of work that at least I've been involved with. I think the congregation has been searching for a new home for a while and have gone through some challenges, and as Councillor Deans said, the original location in our community was fraught with a number of challenges, mostly due to the proximity to the rail yard and the school and all the regulations associated with that, so they've been through a lot. But we can't discount what we've heard today from the community. I think the concerns about traffic, although not directly a planning issue, are definitely legitimate and have proven to be a multi-year issue. And we know that there will be a net increase to those traffic concerns with the welcoming of the new center in the community. So my commitment to my community has always been to address these issues. We've talked today about some issues that have already been undertaken, and I've worked with traffic services staff, particularly over the last month, to look at some additional options. And I'm actually satisfied with what the potential can and will be. And again, working with Councillor Deans on site plan, as this is located just inside, 5 meters inside the Gloucester Southgate ward. So in speaking with Mr. Mark and Traffic Services and the Councillor and Chair Harder, I'm going to provide direction to staff this morning, which I've written out. And it's simply that staff be directed to continue to work with, and I'm naming myself, Councillor Brockington, on appropriate and community-endorsed traffic calming initiatives at or in the vicinity of the Albion Road North Kitchener intersection and potentially other locations within the immediate River Ward neighborhood. And that's just to continue that conversation going and recognizing that the community will be engaged and involved in this process. Thank you.
Good, thank you very much. Thanks for everyone for coming, and thanks for your initiative, Councillor Deans. I know that it has been a very difficult site, and you know, when you think about other large machinery type vehicles and that could be a Tomlinson or something like that could go in there, and or a works yard for the city for that matter with all of the equipment. I think that it was a great initiative of yours, so thank you very much. So on the item, is it carried? Carried, thank you. All right, so now we're going back to the beginning to Councillor Wilkinson's last item in her term of office after many, many years. And I know it's important to you, so I'm going to
apologize for being late. I left at 8 o'clock this morning to get here.
Well, Councillor Hughley just beat you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're going to have a presentation. So if you'd just like to introduce it just briefly.
This is something we've been working on for some years. I think I've had 4 public meetings on it. The city owns land in this area as well as privately owned land, so it's a fairly complex area. It has the town center park, which we renamed the Bill Tarrant Park, is within that, and this amendment is actually to enlarge the park, which is meeting some of the objectives of the community, setting up the changes which have happened in the last 20 years and the need for residential units and things of that nature in here, and to look at how we might in the future be able to turn part of Canada Avenue into a main street and have that type of a facility. So it touches many, many different aspects. I can tell you I've been working with city staff too on some of this land, so to get some for supportive housing in that area, and that's coming together. So it's going to be very close to where the light rail some year, maybe sometime this decade, or next decade, or maybe this century, will come to Canada. And in the meantime, there's bus service right at the door. So it has a lot of attributes that are very important. This Canada North now, I have 11 high-rise buildings in my ward now, which is unusual outside the Greenbelt. I've got 2 more under construction and 2 more in plans now, so that will lead to 15. And this is an area where the highest density is. It's close to residential. It's other residential. It's close to shopping. It has all the things going for it. So this is an important document to update what was a very important thing that I worked on actually in the 90s when I was a councillor on the Canada Council at the time when we were trying to get the town centre started, and it really is taking off now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So over to you, Mr. Migueles, and you're going to do a presentation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning. This is a scoped official plan amendment for the secondary plan of the Canada Town Centre. and an environmental assessment for the stretch of Canada Avenue that goes through that part of the town center. You'll be hearing from the lead planner, Emily Davies, on the official plan amendment, and Sean Doyle on the environmental assessment.
Good morning, Madam Chair. I'll provide a brief overview of the official plan amendment component of this application, and I'll pass it off to Sean. So the report recommendations in front of you include 4 different recommendations. 2 of the recommendations are with regards to the official plan amendment component of this. The first is making some amendments to the text of the site-specific policies for Canada Avenue Town Centre, as well as the schedule. And then the is to include the Canada Town Centre concept plan as an appendice to the site-specific policies. The 2 remaining report recommendations are with regards to the EA, the environmental assessment, and we'll get into those in a minute. The Town Centre site-specific policies include, sorry, just one second. The Canada Town Centre site-specific policies were brought forward from the former Canada at the time of amalgamation. The proposed amendment includes a scoped provision to expand an open space parcel within the city-owned lands of the town centre. This will result in a larger public park. The amendment provides updates to the policy direction to reflect the deletion of an identified main street, which is currently not constructed and which bisects the open space parcel located in the own land. The employment targets are also proposed to be updated for the entire town center area in an effort to be consistent with the official plan, the parent official plan. The residential targets are also updated to reflect the dwelling units that are built to date and allow room for future opportunities. The updates to the mapping schedules are also proposed as part of this package to reflect the land use designation changes. And lastly, we're proposing to include the concept plan, which is now up on the screen. This concept plan illustrates how the city-owned lands could be developed, fronting onto Canada Avenue, Compo Drive, and the Canadian Shield Avenue. And now I'll pass it off to Sean Doyle, who will speak to the EA portion.
Thank you. So the Canada Avenue EA covers the stretch of Canada Avenue Ford Bing Way to Earl Grey Drive, essentially from just north of Highway 417 to just south of Compo Drive. The study was undertaken originally really for 2 purposes: to establish and get approvals for the widening of this portion of Canada Avenue to 4 lanes, and to transform the section to provide a complete street accommodating all modes of travel. This project is within phase 2, identified as a phase 2 project within the 2013 Transportation Master Plan and the Affordable Network. And the final cost estimate from the project was about $10.4 million of capital cost in 2016 dollars. But both the status as far as the timing and priority goes and the cost estimates are currently being revised through the DC update. This project started a little while ago. We actually started in the spring of 2013, and since then we've had 3 points of public contact. We've had 3 formal points of public contact through public open houses. We've also had a number of landowner meetings and with the councillor, and we've actually attended the councillors' community meetings to provide project updates. And we are really at the end of the planning process. The next step for this project would be to post the notice of completion and to take the project through the statutory requirement for a 30-day public review period, assuming support from the committee. So really the features of the cross-section, and Emily, maybe to the next slide, please, is, as I mentioned earlier, to provide a complete street, looking to accommodate all modes of travel, and while accommodating them, really encourage walking and cycling in this area. It also, the design represents very good integrated planning. It connects the street to the adjacent lands by providing streetscaping, patio space, parking for both
cars in the off-peaks and for bicycles. We've created gateway features and provided opportunity for public art. And we've created a unique street furniture program to really identify this section of Canada Avenue as distinct within the city. Have we connected it to the planned commercial development, but we've made sure to connect it through to the natural features in the park space that will be preserved in the area by creating a green linkage from the park out to the street. So as I mentioned briefly, the next steps from this project are to finalize the environmental study report, taking into account any comments or direction from this committee and from council itself. We would then file the notice of completion and take the project through the required 30-day review process.
Thank you. Question, Councillor Blais.
Thanks. When you say this is a phase 2 project in the TMP, does Canada Avenue exist today and this is a road widening, or is this brand new construction, this phase 2 TMP project?
Madam Chair, Canada Avenue exists today. The project as defined in the TMP is the roadway widening from existing 2 lanes to 4 lanes.
Okay, and the road is classified as?
An arterial.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right, we do have a speaker, Leger Xavier. Xavier? Is your first name Leger?
It is.
Okay.
Contrary to how you might normally read it.
Hey, I read it right, which is just a bonus for me. Okay, you have 5 minutes. Thank you for coming.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Just wanted to thank the committee for allowing me to speak this morning. I'm Senior Vice President for Realty Corporation. We've been building in the town center and working with the community and the for almost 30 years, specifically on this project. So we've gone through a number of phases, starting with the first phase, which was the community center. Starting in the early 2000s, we started transitioning into the RSC2 lands, which is really the culmination of the transition between traditional community commercial and the highest order that was really mandated or envisioned for the town center. So through the years, we've participated in a number of studies through Councillor Wilkinson as well as through the city, really overlaying the vision for the regional shopping center, which is a kind of a defined term under the secondary plan and plan policies, linking it to the town center. So through that vision, we had really signed off and participated in a comprehensive look to how do we integrate and create the highest order experience in the town center. It obviously allows for a multitude of years. It allows for transition, expansion, intensification. And from our standpoint, this was a very much a collaborative manner in the sense that the town center and the regional shopping center are joined. The success of both are key to the community, they're key to the objectives of all involved. We've got the potential of a LRT expansion, significant dollars in investment to the community, and that's at the heart of our center. So we very much value the investment that the city is looking to make within the community as well as within the center. It would be the focal point as we move forward. That as an amenity to the ability for us to intensify the center to meet the objectives that are set out under the policies are really what we're driving towards. So we're not here to identify that we're not in favor of development, and we're not here to definitely identify that we're not looking to partner with the city. I think what we're looking to express some concerns in is just what we believe is that I think we're just a little bit premature. We believe that the secondary plan or the OPA amendment that's been proposed by the city in conjunction with the EA, so another capital investment, really has been uncoordinated with the vision for the regional shopping center. And in that instance, our success really is predicated on the success of the community. So we're looking to engage the city on more of a comprehensive way to review the policies and the design guidelines and everything to make the center and this community what it needs to be and what it will be. So again, the concerns really to date is that the scoped nature of what's been put forward, we don't feel reflect the intention of the multitude of studies, open houses with respect to the overall Canada Town Centre. And we've, through the process and through the public engagement, we've expressed these concerns to but we believe staff's mandates effectively were to bring forward a scoped amendment, whether that was from the intention of trying to keep it in the context of dealing with the city lands. We can't speculate, but I believe our feedback has been that we want to partner in this success. We want to partner in the success of the community, and in order to do so, we believe, and we've always felt that success is really predicated on a larger look to how does the regional shopping center integrate into the town center lands. There's a very significant Main Street component that was identified in the secondary plan policies that's really, it's been deleted in this. So, from that standpoint, we want to understand how the city will be implementing the vision of the town center within the framework that's coming forward. We've asked through a letter that we've submitted from our planner for some more background, for some more feedback. A lot of our questions have been really predicated on wanting to ensure that we can together to implement, and we just don't feel at this point in time that we're comfortable with what's been put forward in the context of how the site and how the regional shopping center integrates into the overall town center.
Thank you. The scope of this is really quite minor in nature from what you're talking about, and when you think about transit-oriented development, etc., I mean, you're a prime candidate for that, okay? And I see that going forward, just like we will with the Lincoln Fields, like we just did with Elmville Acres, like we did with Westgate, that sort of thing. But the scope of this is certainly not going to impede that at all. I'll just ask, does anyone have any questions? So I'm going to ask Mr. Nicholas to comment on it after Councillor Wilkinson.
We have talked about this a number of times, but in my view, this particular one is not taking anything away from the shopping complexes, which you partly own and others as well. The enhancement of that and things, I think, as Councillor McCarter has just said, should be the subject of additional work and things, because it is near the Terry Fox station is right there, and it will eventually be rapid bus transit maybe, and maybe even someday the rail will be there, and that means that there'll be major impacts on the shopping center subject. So this is primarily designed for the central business district section, which is across the road from you, which includes the city lands and Urbandale lands, and I think that, as we said, I don't want to hold this up anymore. We've been talking about this now for the first meeting. 2013. It's many years we've been talking about this. The city lands are ready to go now. They've been placed with the Community Lands Corporation to get them moving forward, and this is needed for the residential component and things like that, which doesn't affect you very much right now. And I think that I would certainly recommend, and I've talked to the incoming councillor as well, who would like to see this moving forward now, about the importance of continuing to work on what is on the shopping center. We have a BIA there now, which is also interested in working with you on how that area could become a prime town center. So I think holding it up now doesn't make sense. I don't know why you think it does have that impact on you.
Sure, through you, Madam Chair. Fundamentally, our concerns relate to the lands that we have abutting Canada Avenue. So again, the idea is that these lands are transitional lands. There is an effect for those lands predicated on what is ultimately the vision for the north side of Canada Avenue. And given that this is a combined LPA and EA, effectively the presentation that the city has made with respect to looking at Canada Avenue, the vision for Canada Avenue, we've always felt that we're involved in that, we should be participating in that to the extent the improvements affect the shopping center. Again, we're not here to debate the RSC1 or the RSC2 designations. Fundamentally, we're here to deal with the RSC3 designations, which are the lands on the south side of Canada Avenue. So we've been brought into this through the combined OPA as well as EA, and again, the concern specifically is that those lands are designated under the scheduled policies to be high-density employment, and based on the site-specific or the OPA that's been proposed, again, there seems to be potentially a division for the north side of Canada Avenue. So all we've asked is that until we can understand and until we can be satisfied that that vision is consistent, that we will in effect be that transition between the regional shopping center and whatever the future holds for Canada Avenue. That's been the nature of the conversation. We're not ultimately concerned that residential wouldn't help the retail. Quite honestly, more retail, more customers in the market helps. There's a designation on our portion of the lands today that's affected by what the city envisions for the north side, and that was predicated on the previous vision for the north side of the land. So that's been the primary concern.
But these lands have always been going for development. What this does is boost the development land, because by adding to the park. Anyway, that's Madam Chair. I think this dialogue has been going on for some years, and we're not actually changing what's allowed and things. In fact, we did an amendment a few years ago that would help you at your request for making some changes along the avenue. So we have dealt with some of those issues, and if there are additional ones, the city will deal with them. I think maybe staff could comment on all of that.
So, Alain.
Madam Chair, Mr. Xavier is correct. The scope of our amendment here is very limited, and what we have heard from Penn Equity is that there is a wish and a desire to take a broader look at the future of lands and the totality of the Canada Town Centre lands, which in our minds should take place, and the intention of having that discussion and involving all of the landowners who own or are close to the Canada Town Centre. I can see that the upcoming official plan review could be one opportunity for that to happen. Another is typically with the Stage 3 LRT extending to Canada, as the city has done. We look at the vicinity of major stations. This is a major station, so we'd be looking at assisting Penn Equity and other landowners in rethinking the future of their lands, rethinking the evolution of that shopping center, as the city and our department has done for other shopping centers in similar circumstances. So to echo Councillor Wilkinson, Madam Chair, the city is prepared to continue to work with Penn Equity and other landowners in the Canada Town Centre. The purpose of this particular amendment was simply to sort of move the yardsticks in formalizing what is now the current vision for the Canada Town Centre. If you remember, pre-amalgamation with Tundra Semiconductors at the time, there had been a plan and have placed a city hall for the City of Canada on lands which are obviously not required for purpose today. There was an open space, and there's a lot of the leftovers of 25 years ago that we need to update. And this I would see more as a housekeeping amendment to formalize things that I think have been known for at least 5, if not 10 years.
Okay, thank you for coming out, sir. So just to wrap it up in a nice little bow, you agree that the time has come, or going to be interested in doing the sort of large picture Westgate, Elmvale Acres, Lincoln Fields for that very large site?
Absolutely, Madam Chair.
Yeah, and you know, Councillor Wilkinson is correct in saying, you know, we have looked at pieces of it. Like, what was the one that had the, you know, where the road's higher and then the parking lot was lower? Remember that was last year, I think. Remember, wasn't there a... No, that's not. That's right. Anyways, okay. So before us today is the Avenue Secondary Plan Amendment and Environmental Assessment. Anybody have anything to say? Is it carried? Carried. Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm going to turn, before we adjourn, because I think, let's see. Any notices of motion? Any inquiries? Before we adjourn, I'm going to turn the mic over to Councillor Kadri.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you for this opportunity to have the mic. It's a pleasure this morning to say a few thank yous to some of the people that I've worked with over the past 12 years. My tenure on the Planning Committee started back in 2006, and I've been a member of this committee for the last 12 years. This committee has, as the Chair Harder mentioned this morning, a very important role. A role to build a city, a role to build communities, to build neighborhoods. I remember the first day I came out of a council meeting, and one of the reporters said to me, "Well, Councillor, what was your first impression of this council meeting?" And I said to myself and to the reporter, I said, you know, it felt like I was in a sandbox. And the reporter asked me, "What do you mean by a sandbox?" I said, "Well, you know, the discussions that happened around the table were something similar to a child saying, 'Give me my lollipop back.' And the person says, 'Well, how do you know it's your lollipop?' The child says, 'Well, I opened it and licked it, so it's my lollipop, give it back.' So that was my first very, you know, premature presumptions and assumptions of the City Council. So the reporter wisely said to me, he says, "You know, that you played in the sandcastle, what's your mandate?" I said, "For this council and for my role as a councillor is to project a best City of Ottawa sandcastle coming out of those meetings." And that's something that stuck with me from back then to today. We don't build roads in communities. And they're more than just about buildings and roads. I know that's what mainly this committee does, along with, you know, partners from Parks and Rec and Transportation and Transit. Communities are built of people. Caring people, compassionate people. And over the 12 years, along with most of you and some of you, you've seen those same people come and speak to us as audience in this committee. And everyone can sitting on this relay and say, you know, we've heard about traffic, we've heard about property values, we've heard about congestions, all the things that everybody seems to talk about when they come to Planning Committee. Because change in their neighborhood is something that everybody takes personally. And that change in some of those committees or some of those applications, in my opinion, are for the better. Some maybe not, but most are. I look at my own community from Stittsville. I mean, this community was coming out of its suburban rural mix of development and of thinking. There was anything wrong with that thinking, but city decided that it's going to become a suburban neighborhood. And that's exactly what we've become. A suburban neighborhood where still the people do care and do work in the community to help make it better. And some of those people have come to this audience table and said, this is what we're looking for. This is what we think we should have in Stittsville. Some of that has happened and has come to fruition. More have been done, possibly. But I'll leave that to the next person taking over the seat as I move on. The thing for each one of you, especially my councillor colleagues, as you already know, is to build your community to the best way you think that is going to help your neighborhoods and your communities. Keeping in mind, as 23 individual communities or councillors, you represent a piece of the puzzle. And it's that puzzle this planning committee has an opportunity to put together and does every time it meets and before it meets. So it's my pleasure this morning to say thank you to you as my colleagues and to my previous colleagues that have sat around the table with me, and to city staff, the planning staff. You know, I started my term here with John Moser as General Manager of Planning, along with other respected members of the Planning Department. Today, I'm leaving with Stephen Willis as the General Manager, and very capable hands, and he's done a great job since he's taken over this portfolio. My thank yous not restricted to the following names. Leah, thank you. John Smith, Elaine Migueles, Derek Moody, Don Hairwire. These are some of the people that I had direct contact with, building, working in Stittsville. I also took this opportunity to thank all of the planners and engineers and different various staffs of the planning department, including one that came out of my office as recently as a year ago, for guiding, for leading not only this committee, but my community and my staff. To you, Ms. Harder, you and I have known each other for a while. Over our days in the retail industry, I've often heard you say, customer service. That's what this committee is about. That's what this city is about. But customer service doesn't happen on its own. Customer service takes dedicated people like Councillor Harder and other members of this committee and residents of this city to make that customer service stick and be pleasant and be polite and be courteous. And that's what you've done, Jan. Over the years, you've treated everybody, most of the time, that come and sat in the gallery with respect, and especially respect for their opinions. And that's the key, because those people take time out of their busy schedules to come and speak with us, and at least we could give them 5 minutes of our time to say their piece and listen to their piece. The other thing I've heard from you, Jan, over and over again on this committee is how well Barhaven or Nepean, was run. With Councillor Shirley on your side, Gord Hunter there at the same time, and people like Myra Lynch from Stittsville as one of the planners, government level. And the thing I've always admired about you, Jack, beside the fiery redhead, is the fact that most of the time, I would say 100% of the time, you know what you're speaking of and talking about. And if you don't, you go out and do research to find out how to make things better and how to not appease necessarily each one of us or all of the residents, but to make things better. You said this morning, applications are complex. It's your role and this committee's role to make complexity better understood. And that's what you do all the time. You dig to the bottom and you find that one key nugget to say, this will make not everybody happy, but it'll move the process forward. And that's what a role of a committee chair is. So thank you for all of that work, Jan, over the years. I also want to thank Mayor Watson, Steve Kanalakis, for their leadership and their support for this committee. Just some of the accomplishments that we've come together with Jan and this committee and previous planning committees for the community of Stittsville. Sorry about getting emotional. Share Road Woods, the acquisition of that woods area, protecting the tree canopy. That community has used that area for about 30 years and will continue it. The Carp River restoration, again, a great project, a big project that affects not only my ward, but affects Councillor Hubley's, Councillor Wilkinson, and Councillor Shanturi's wards. The expansion of Hazeldean Road years ago, that made sure that the community was ready to expand. That includes the bridge, Alan. I'm sorry, but that does include the bridge. Building better, smarter suburbs, suburban neighborhoods. I remember the bus trip that came into Stittsville with some of our colleagues and asked some of the issues that were being not only raised in Stittsville, but other areas of the city. How do we work through those and work to better development, better communities, better neighborhoods? The expansion of Goulburn Rec Complex, from phase 1, which was done through Goulburn Township, to phase 2 and 3, to make it a modern center for a growing community as it is today. I'm happy to say that Stittsville, I'm leaving behind as a councillor, but not leaving behind as a community, is a strong community and will continue to grow. And its projected population up to 70,000 in the next 25 years. I want to thank each and every one of you, and if I have forgotten somebody, I do apologize for that. And I most of all want to thank the people that come here every time there's a planning committee meeting and have their say, including my residents and my community. Thank you very much, everybody.